Welcome to BeFM Drama, where we turn great works of English literature into gripping radio. I'm your host, Joshua Cornwell, and today we're moving away from the case files of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's great detective Sherlock Holmes to bring you two brilliant short stories by that inspired master of early science fiction, H.G. Wells. Today we're presenting the first of 3 parts in our adaptation of The Star, a brilliant work of science fiction first published in 1897 that more than makes up for its scientific inaccuracies with a harrowing and brilliantly rendered depiction of an apocalyptic disaster inflicted on our planet by implacable cosmic forces that care nothing for the will or suffering of man. So sit back and enjoy as we bring you part 1 of H.G. Wells' The Star here on BeFM Drama. It was on the first day of the new year that the announcement was made, almost simultaneously from 3 observatories, that the motion of the planet Neptune, the outermost of all the planets that wheel around the sun, had become very erratic. Ogilvy had already called attention to a suspected change in its velocity in December. Such a piece of news was scarcely calculated to interest a world the greater portion of whose inhabitants were unaware of the existence of the planet Neptune. Nor outside the astronomical profession did the subsequent discovery of a faint remote speck of light in the region of the perturbed planet cause any very great excitement. Scientific people, however, found the information remarkable enough, even before it became known that the new body was rapidly growing larger and brighter, that its motion was quite different from the orderly progress of the planets, and that the deflection of Neptune and its satellite was becoming now of an unprecedented kind. Few people without training in science can realize the huge isolation of the solar system. The sun with its speck of planets, its dust of planetoids, and its impalpable comets swims in a vacant immensity that almost defeats the imagination. Beyond the orbit of Neptune, there is space, vacant as far as any human observation has penetrated, without warmth or light or sound, blank emptiness for 20 million times a million miles. That is the smallest estimate of the distance to be traversed before the very nearest of the stars is reached. And, except for a few comets more unsubstantial than the thinnest flame, no matter had ever to human knowledge crossed this gulf of space, until early in the 20th century, this strange wanderer appeared. A vast mass of matter it was, bulky, heavy, rushing without warning out of the black mystery of the sky into the radiance of the sun. By the second day, it was clearly visible to any decent instrument as a speck with a barely sensible diameter in the constellation Leo near Regulus. In a little while, even an opera glass could observe it. On the 3rd day of the new year, the newspaper readers of 2 hemispheres were made aware for the first time of the real importance of this unusual apparition in the heavens. A planetary collision, one London paper headed the news and proclaimed Duchesne's opinion that this strange new planet would probably collide with Neptune. The leader writers enlarged upon the topics so that in most of the capitals of the world, on January 3rd, there was an expectation, however vague, of some imminent phenomena in the sky. And as the night followed the sunset round the globe, thousands of men turned their eyes skyward to see the old familiar stars, just as they had always been. Until it was dawn in London, and Pollux setting and the stars overhead grown pale. The winter's dawn it was, a sickly, filtering accumulation of daylight, and the light of gas and candles shone yellow in the windows to show where people were astir. But the yawning policemen saw the thing. The busy crowds in the markets stopped agape. Workmen going to their work, milkmen, the drivers of news carts, dissipation going home jaded and pale, homeless wanderers, sentinels on their beats. And in the country, laborers trudging afield, poachers slinking home. All over the dusty, quickening country it could be seen. And out at sea by seamen watching for day, a great white star come suddenly into the westward sky. Brighter it was than any star in our skies. Brighter than the evening star at its brightest. It still glowed out white and large, no mere twinkling spot of light, but a small, round, clear, shining disk, an hour after the day had come. And where science has not reached, men stared and feared, telling one another of wars and pestilences that are foreshadowed by these fiery signs in the heavens. Sturdy Boers, dusky Hottentots, Gold Coast Africans, Frenchmen, Spaniards, Portuguese stood in the warmth of the sunrise, watching the setting of this strange new star. And in 100 observatories, there had been suppressed excitement, rising almost to shouting pitch, as the two remote bodies had rushed together and hurrying to and fro to gather photographic apparatus and spectroscope, and this appliance and that, to record this novel, astonishing sight, the destruction of a world. For it was a world, a sister planet of our Earth, far greater than our Earth indeed, that had so suddenly flashed into flaming death. Neptune it was, had been struck fairly and squarely by the strange planet from outer space, and the heat of the concussion had incontinently turned two solid globes into one vast mass of incandescence. Round the world that day, 2 hours before the dawn, went the pallid great white star, fading only as it sank westward and the sun mounted above it. Everywhere men marveled at it, but of all those who saw it, none could have marveled more than those sailors, habitual watchers of the stars, who far away at sea had heard nothing of its advent, and saw it now rise like a pygmy moon, and climb zenithward, and hang overhead, and sink westward with the passing of the night. And when next it rose over Europe, everywhere were crowds of watchers on hilly slopes, on house roofs, in open spaces, staring eastward for the rising of the great new star. It rose with a white glow in front of it, like the glare of a white fire, and those who had seen it come into existence the night before cried out at the sight of it, "It is larger," they cried, "it is brighter." And indeed the moon, a quarter full and sinking in the west, was in its apparent size beyond comparison. But scarcely in all its breadth had it as much brightness now as the little circle of the strange new star.
"It is brighter,"
cried the people clustering in the streets. But in the dim observatories the watchers held their breath and peered at one another.
"It is nearer, nearer."
And voice after voice repeated, "It is nearer." And the clicking telegraph took that up, and it trembled along telephone wires, and in 1,000 cities grimy compositors fingered the type. It is nearer. Men writing in offices, struck with a strange realization, flung down their pens. Men talking in 1,000 places suddenly came upon a grotesque possibility in those words. It is nearer. It hurried along wakening streets. It was shouted down from the frost-stilled ways of quiet villages. Men who had read these things from the throbbing tape stood in yellow-lit doorways, shouting the news to the passer-by. It is nearer. Pretty women, flushed and glittering, heard the news told jestingly between the dances, and feigned an intelligent interest they did not feel.
Nearer, indeed. How curious. How very, very clever people must be to find out things like that.
Lonely tramps, faring through the wintry night, murmured those words to comfort themselves, looking skyward.
"It has to be nearer, for the night's as cold as charity. Don't see much warmth from it, if it is nearer all the same."
What is a new star to me?
cried the weeping woman kneeling beside her dead. The schoolboy, rising early for his examination work, puzzled it out for himself, with the great white star shining broad and bright through the frost flowers of his window.
Stop a planet in its flight, rob it of its centrifugal force. What then? Centripetal has it, and down it falls into the sun. And this, do we come in the way, I wonder?
The light of that day went the way of its brethren, and with the later watches of the frosty darkness rose the strange star again. And it was now so bright that the waxing moon seemed but a pale yellow ghost of itself, hanging huge in the sunset. In a South African city a great man had married, and the streets were alight to welcome his return with his bride.
"Even the skies have illuminated."
Under Capricorn, two African lovers, daring the wild beasts for love of one another, lay together in a canebrake where the fireflies hovered.
That is our star.
They whispered, and all felt strangely comforted by the sweet brilliance of its light. All across the globe, human beings watch in wonder as a new star blossoms in the night sky, a cosmic inferno caused by the collision of a massive rogue planet with the gas giant Neptune, a collision that has knocked the planet out of orbit and set it on a collision course with our world. For now, the light of this new star is merely beautiful and strange, its beguiling light disguising a terrible and fast-approaching threat to our world. Join us again tomorrow evening as the new star draws nearer and we bring you part 2 in our adaptation of this classic work of science fiction here on BeFM Drama.